What's up everyone? It was just announced in a news story that Singapore will actually be the first country to approve the sale of lab-grown meat, which is a very interesting development in the future of the food supply for the human race for sure. And lab meat, if you don't know, is the meat that they make from the regeneration of animal cells. They take the cells from an animal and then they put it into a solution, a nutrient-dense solution known as a growth medium, and then they do that until the cells regenerate enough to form tissue. And this tissue is then, by all means and purposes, edible animal tissue, like the animal tissue that many people currently consume. And as you can imagine, as a vegan, I get asked from time to time about what my thoughts are regarding lab meat and if I would ever eat it myself. So I thought I'd go over those thoughts today. But first, let me welcome you to Vegan Yak, where I yak about all things vegan. I'm Walter, and if you're looking for more information about veganism, then make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell so that way the next week when another video comes out and I'm yakking about something else vegan, you'll be the first to know. Now let me know what you think in the comments down below and what your thoughts are about lab meat. Would you eat it? What if I double dog dared you? So here are my thoughts on lab meat as a vegan. First, let's take a look at the pros of lab meat. Number one, it could cause a lot less animal suffering. I mean, in theory, you could take the cells from a single feather and turn it into hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe even an infinite amount of chicken tissue for consumption. And this would be a lot less animal suffering than what it currently takes, or what currently takes place to get thousands of chicken breasts, which is of course killing thousands of chickens. There are some cons to this that I'll go over here in just a bit, but overall, the amount of animal suffering could be greatly decreased. Pro number two, less environmental damage. I mean, the number of animals needed to have lab meat is much, much less than the number of animals needed for the current meat production, so environmental damage would also be greatly decreased. Right now, we have about 70 billion land animals on this planet specifically for animal agriculture. And animal agriculture in its current state is one of the leading causes of greenhouse gas emissions. It uses 45% of our ice-free land, about 1/3 of our clean water supply. It's the leading cause of rainforest deforestation, oceanic dead zones, water pollution, habitat destruction, and species extinction. But if the number of animals reduced from 70 billion to a handful of animals for lab meat, then this would not be the case. Pro number three, potential health benefits of lab meat. I mean, right now, animal agriculture has a serious problem when it comes to health. For instance, we have pandemics and the spread of these zoonotic diseases because of animals being kept in the conditions they are for animal agriculture. But again, with the reduction of animals being raised, this risk would be greatly reduced, if not eliminated. And another example of potential health benefits would be the stoppage of large antibiotic use on farms. Right now, we feed a ton of antibiotics to these animals to keep them healthy, because if we didn't, they would all suffer from far more diseases than they do currently because of the way that they're kept. But this is one thing that's causing us to near the end of an effective antibiotic era. So us being able to stop using these antibiotics on scale for 70 billion animals would definitely be a benefit. And finally, when it comes to health, the meat made in labs could be altered. They could potentially reduce the fat content or make other changes like nutrient fortification, and that could reduce the currently high risk of heart disease from these products. I believe there are limitations here for sure, and we'll go over those, but it could still be a potential benefit. Pro number four, animal products for other markets. I mean, the biggest one that comes to mind here would be pet food for sure. I haven't made a video yet about my views on pets, but this could be one of the greatest benefits of lab meat if we continue to have pets in the future, especially carnivorous pets like cats. Lab meat could also potentially be used to even reduce like wildlife suffering as well, or at least in theory. So with all these potential benefits, you might be thinking, well, heck yeah, let's just switch to lab meat. But hold up, partner, because unfortunately there are a long list of cons too. Con number one, there's still unnecessary animal suffering in lab meat. Although it may be possible in the future to use a chicken feather for an infinite supply of meat, that doesn't appear to be the norm right now. As an example, most of the tissue right now is being made using fetal bovine serum, which is from the blood of a cow fetus. So it still involves animal slaughter, and right now the growth mediums that they use to grow these cells are also often made from animal products. And on top of that, there's still a current limit on how far a set of cells can take you. So you do have to keep getting more cells and more growth medium, meaning that there still needs to be animals that are being enslaved and killed for this solution. So it may reduce animal suffering, but it doesn't eliminate it for sure. Con number 2, the health benefits could be great, especially when it comes to pandemics, antibiotic use, and the nutrient alteration, but it still wouldn't be ideal. I don't believe that you can alter meat so much and keep the taste and texture that people would eat it. So there would still be saturated fat and cholesterol, which are the leading indicators for the cause of heart disease. And I haven't seen any clear indication that these products would be changed enough or be able to be changed enough to reduce the current cancer risk that they have. Especially if you were going to still use these products and process them for products like bacon and hot dogs, because processed meats are a class 1 carcinogen. So again, there would be some health benefits, but it's not a perfect solution here either. Con number 3, the cost. It would take trillions of dollars and an immense amount of resources to get lab meat to the scale where it could replace the current meat supply. And it isn't even clear that once it did that, it would be able to be all that affordable to the consumer. I mean, it has seen quite the price drop since it started, since like the first hamburger patty was like $280,000 from lab meat. Now it's projected to be closer to $10 per patty in the coming years. So maybe it eventually will be more affordable to everyone, but I don't know that for sure. And to get it to that stage is gonna take a lot. Con number 4, and this might be the biggest one, people won't eat it. This doesn't mean that it couldn't possibly be part of the solution to some things, but there have been multiple surveys conducted about this, and they find that large amounts of the population are not open to eating lab meat. One study pointed to 9% of people rejecting lab meat entirely outright, and the other 2/3 being hesitant to eat it. Another study pointed to 33% of Americans not willing to try lab meat. This is not surprising to me. I mean, so many people tell me that they think veganism is not natural, and that's part of why they won't do it. So if this ridiculous narrative and excuse keeps going, I don't think the masses will be rushing to get something made in a lab. And the fact that potentially large parts of the population won't eat lab meat might be the biggest con of all, because of course, if you can't get the public behind the idea, then all the benefits go out the window. Now, the same can be said for veganism. It's hard to get people to go vegan, and that can be a con too, but in recent times, the growth of the movement has been quite encouraging. Con number 5, and this is tied to con number 4, but the options are still limited for lab meat. I have seen how they can create the tissue and therefore can make products like a burger or a chicken nugget, but what about an egg? What about a chicken wing with bones? I mean, what about different cuts of steak that might be bone in? What about a crab leg that you break open? I mean, what about an oyster in its shell? When a person goes vegan, they decide that these are no longer things they value, and so it doesn't really matter if they get replacements. But will this be the same for the person who chooses lab meat? Will they still choose to eat just burgers and nuggets and maybe a fish fillet or something, and then forego all other animal foods that they eat? Or will they eat lab meat for some things, but still go and pay for the chicken slaughter when they want the experience of a wing or the crack of an egg? I mean, I would venture to say that they will still pay for the other items because they still value them and they desire them. And what might be worse is that they feel like they're more justified to do so because some of the time they choose a more ethical choice of lab meat. These are just my guesses, or I guess more so my questions that I have. But again, if lab meat doesn't actually replace all meat and all animal products, then it might make a dent, but for most of the benefits on the pro list, like environmental benefits, they just might not actually exist, or the benefits might not at least exist enough to really make a difference. Given all these pros and cons, what are my current thoughts about lab meat? Well, I think it has a lot of benefits for sure, and despite that, I think it's absolutely pathetic as an idea for human consumption. We're in a society where people have become so unwilling to change their personal habits for the greater good. I mean, this is apparent during a global pandemic for sure, but this solution of lab meat is another shining example of that. You've got individuals that know about the animal suffering, the environmental destruction, the negative effects on other humans, and the negative health consequences, and they're still sitting there going, well, once I can get the exact same taste pleasure, the exact same sensory pleasure that lasts for about 5 minutes, then I might care enough to change. But until then, I'll keep paying for trillions of animals to be killed and contribute to unnecessary human suffering and contribute to the greatest cause of environmental destruction, until lab meat comes around. That in my opinion is selfish, pathetic, and disheartening. We already have a solution that has all the same pros, but potentially better. I mean, being vegan reduces animal suffering, it's the ideal diet for the environment, and it reduces human suffering. Also, a well-planned whole food plant-based diet is arguably the healthiest diet on the planet, and it can be totally affordable. Veganism isn't perfect, but it is a completely viable solution that we have right now for most of the civilized world. And you still get to have tons of amazing sensory pleasure every time you eat. So why would we invest trillions of dollars into developing an idea that might work instead of investing the money into implementing the existing idea that has already been shown in many cases to work? I mean, I don't know, and obviously my thoughts here don't really matter because lab meat is coming, and I believe it will be a part of our food supply and maybe a part of the solution to the environmental crisis moving forward. I just, for the record, don't think that it should be, because I don't think it's the ideal solution based on the current research. And I guess that opinion could change if the research changes, we'll see, time will tell. I will offer one caveat that might pose an interesting moral dilemma to vegans. Right now, one point that people bring up against vegans is that there are still crop deaths when we harvest plants and insecticides that are used for plant agriculture. And some people think that this causes more animal deaths than just eating a cow or eating an animal like a cow. This isn't true because we still have to feed the cows all of the plants, and when we grow these plants for them, we use insecticides and there will still be harvest deaths. So right now, there are far more animal deaths in animal agriculture than there would be if we were all living a vegan lifestyle. And it's also important to note that there are developing ways of growing food that doesn't involve the same risks, such as vertical farming and veganic farming. So there is a solution that in theory would not have any deaths. But my interesting dilemma would include, I guess, the speed of things. What if lab meat progresses faster than veganic farming, and we reach a point in society where the limited number of animals that are being raised and kept for lab meat and the number of deaths associated are actually less than the current methods for plant food production? Would the more moral thing in that situation be to eat the lab meat knowing that at the time it causes less suffering? Or would it be, the more moral thing be to keep being vegan while pursuing veganic farming as the ideal solution? My instinct is that I personally would not eat lab meat even in this situation and would instead work to pursue the more ideal solution of veganic farming, especially since there are many other factors at play here too, but it could pose an interesting moral dilemma in the future. So I don't know. I don't think that this will actually happen, but it's an interesting thought experiment nonetheless. Let me know what you think about lab meat in the comments down below, but again, I don't think it's where we should be investing our time and our resources when we already have a viable solution on the table. If you want more information about the pandemics and the antibiotic resistance that I talked about, you can check out the video that's on your screen, or you can check out the other recommended video. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like it and you share it. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stop looking at what you can't do and start looking at what you can do. Thanks.